Good day, grade 12 students. Welcome to our applied economics class for this week. You are going to accomplish your module, and for this week, our lesson is all about the law of demand. So before we start, let us have a prayer. So once again, good day to everyone, grade 12 learners. So our lesson for this week is all about the law of demand. And for our learning outcomes for this lesson, first we have defined the market and demand. Second, you are going to define the law of demand. Second, you are going to analyze the demand schedule. Fourth one, you have to identify how demand curve is derived. 5, you're going to solve problems related to law of demand using the demand function. 6, you are going to differentiate change in quantity demanded and change in demand. Then 7th, lastly, you are going to identify the forces that cause the demand curve to change. So let us begin with lesson 1, which is all about the market and the law of demand. So demand is generally affected by the behavior of consumers and supply by the conduct of producers. The interplay between these two sectors is the foundation of economic activity. So basically, in a market, of course, it is where we are going to buy all our resources, all the things that we need, all the things that we want for us to live from day to day. And of course, in the market also, we could also see the sellers where they are the one who are selling these products, or let's say, aside from being the sellers, they could be also the producers. So these, the persons involved in the market, first we have the producer and the consumer, and the interaction between the two is very vital so that our economy will progress and grow. So consumers identify their needs, wants, and demands. So we are the consumers. Of course, what we need, of course, we need food, we need some clothing, and something else. We need also water. And aside from that, we also have our wants, just like some things like accessories or technology that we really want, and some of our demands. While the producers, they are the one who address these needs and wants of the consumers by producing goods and services accordingly. And in the end, the consumer gains satisfaction. Of course, we were able to get what we need and want. That's why we become satisfied. While the producer, they gain profit. So let's talk about this demand. This demand is somehow on the side of the household or the buyer side. So tayo yon, the consumers. So demand pertains to the quantity of a good or service that people are ready to buy at a given price within a given time period when other factors besides price are held constant. Simply put, the demand for a product is the quantity of a good or service that buyers are willing to buy given its price a particular time. So, di ba, in your grade 10, you were able to know what is this law of demand all about in your economics subject. I mean, your economics lesson in your Araling Panlipunan. So, di ba, when we say law of demand, that means if the price go high, then therefore the demand will decrease. If the price will decrease, the demand or the quantity demanded will increase. So therefore, just like in the price of the rice, so therefore let's say the price of the rice that we are buying in the market will increase. So therefore, the ability of some of the individuals to buy certain kilo of rice will also decrease. So kumbaga, for example, before the price of rice is 40 pesos and the quantity or the kilos that you could buy given that price is, let's say, 4 kilos. But by the time that the price of rice will increase, then it becomes 50 pesos per kilo, then there could be a tendency that the quantity that you could buy or the kilo of rice that you could buy will decrease. So let's say nasa 2 kilos na lang. So that is the relationship of the price and the quantity demanded when we talk about demand or the law of demand. So there are three things, no, that demand is trying to tell us. First, the desire to possess a thing. Of course, who desires it? We humans, we are the one who desire it because we want to be satisfied. Okay, by buying the things that we need and want, we could be satisfied, or we could what do you call that one, we could satisfy ourselves. Okay, then second, the ability to pay for it or the means of purchasing it. Then third one, the willingness to utilize it. So now let's talk about the market. Diba, I already explained this one to you a while ago, but let us try to delve deep on the concept of what is market all about. So when there is a demand for a good or service, there is a market. As long as there are these people that are considered as consumers, as long as they have their needs and they have their wants, the market will always be there. A market is where buyers and sellers meet. It is the place where they trade or exchange goods and services, just like what I have explained to you a while ago. So in other words, it is where their transactions takes place. Then there are different kinds of markets, such as the wet market and market. So in a wet market, it is where people usually buy vegetables, meat, fish, and other wet products. While on the other hand, a dry market, it is where people buy shoes, clothes, and other dry goods. So in an economic parlance, the term market, it does not necessarily refer to a tangible area or location where buyers and sellers could transact, because diba, just like nowadays, we don't really have to go to a certain place or what we call a market to buy a product, because right now we already have these what do you call that one, these online markets, just like the Shopee, the Lazada, and other platforms. So it can also represent an intangible domain where goods and services are traded, such as the stock market, or that is also an example, the real estate market, or the labor market, where workers offer their services and employers look for workers to hire. But how are we going to analyze the demand in a certain market? So this time, we are going to discuss all about the methods of demand analysis. So the demand can be analyzed in several ways, and the most common way is to do this through a demand schedule, a demand curve, and a demand function. So we are going to discuss these three right now. So let us begin with the demand schedule. So a demand schedule is a table that shows the relationship of prices and the specific quantities demanded at each of these prices. So we have here a table, and this table is the description of this table is the hypothetical demand schedule for rice per month. So basically in this table, you can see different situations. Okay, these situations ranges from A to E. So there are 5 situations in this table. Aside from that, we could also see the price, which is per kilograms. And we also have here the quantity demanded, or the kilos that could by a certain individual given the price for every situation. So for every situation, we can see there is a corresponding price and there is a corresponding quantity demanded. Just like in situation A, we have the price per kilo is 50, while the quantity demanded, which is the kilogram, is equivalent to 4 kilos. So therefore, what does it mean? So it means that for every kilo wherein the price is 50 pesos, the kilogram that a certain person could buy is 4 kilos. So for letter B, the price is 45 and the quantity demanded is 8. For C, we have 40 pesos, and then the quantity demanded is 12 kilos. Then for situation D, 35 pesos, then ang mabibili ng mga consumers is 16 kilograms. Then for situation E, we have 30 pesos and the quantity demanded is 20. So as you notice, the price from situation A to situation E is decreasing, diba? So from 50 naging 30. But try to observe the quantity demanded. As the price decreases, the quantity demanded increases. Siyempre, kung ang presyo ng bigas ay mag-decrease siya, magbarato siya, so therefore, the tendency now, the people could buy the kilos that a certain people could buy would also increase. So for example, diba, sa 50 kilos, 4 kilos lang ang nabibili. But when the price dropped to 30 pesos, then the quantity demanded will become 20. So the certain people could buy 20 pesos. So note that as the price goes up, the quantity of rice purchased by the consumer goes down and vice versa. And this implies that quantity demanded is inversely related to price. Again, their relationship is they are inversely related to each other or inversely proportional. So in this example, the buyer is not willing to purchase more rice at higher prices, but is willing to buy more if prices are low. Just like what you have observed in the table, or let's say that is the demand schedule. So if you are confused if what demand schedule is all about, so that is the demand schedule, the table itself, wherein we could see there the situation, the price, and the quantity demanded. At this point, let us now discuss the demand curve. So the demand curve is a graphical representation showing the relationship between the prices and quantities demanded per time period. A demand curve has a negative slope. It slopes downward from left to right. And the downward slope indicates the inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. So as you can see there, we have a graph there. So as you can see, the graph or the line is from left going downwards. So that means if the direction of our line or our slope is going to that what do you call that one in that area, or the orientation of its direction is going there, so we could say that our demand curve has a negative slope. It slopes downward from left to right. Then most demand curves slope downward because, first, as the price of the product falls, consumers tend to substitute this now relatively cheaper products for others in their purchase. Second, as the price of the product falls, this increases the consumer's real income, allowing them to buy more products. So the reason why the slope for the demand is negative, wherein it slopes downward from left to right, because the relationship between the price and the quantity demanded is inversely proportional. Diba? The price goes up, then the quantity demanded will decrease, and vice versa. That's why the slope is negative. So let us have this example. So basically, we are going to base our demand curve to our demand schedule. You cannot create a demand curve if you do not have a demand schedule. So first, you are going to analyze your demand schedule. So for example, let us use the example that I gave to you a while ago. So wherein we have 5 situations here from A to E, and we have corresponding prices. That ranges from 50 to 30 pesos, and our quantity demanded ranges from 4 kilos to 20 kilos. So as you can see, since the price will be the one to adjust to the quantity demanded. For example, let's say the price of a certain product, ano ba na product, let's say rice pa rin. So for example, the demand for rice is really high at that certain time frame. So we all know that the supply of the rice is only limited, hindi siya sobrang dami talaga. So the reason why we are limiting, we are controlling, or the people responsible behind that one, or the producers, they are limiting the price, or they are controlling the price so that these resources could be allocated to everyone, lahat makakatanggap. So for example, for that certain period, let's say yung mga condensed milk. So for example, Pasko, di ba? So madaming bibili ng condensed. So ang tendency, ang number of supply noong mga nakaraang buwan is also the same nitong this month, wherein Christmas season. Kaya lang the demand for the condensed milk increased. So therefore, if the price of that certain product remains the same, then ang tendency, mauubos kaagad ang condensed milk. So now the tendency now, the consumer sees that there is an increase in the demand, or the quantity demanded increases for that certain product, then the tendency is patataasan ang presyo. So for example, the demand is nasa 20 ang demand, no? So for example, ang demand nasa 20 what you call that one, 20 pieces of that certain product. Tapos ang nabibili during that time is the price during that time is 20 pesos. So if there is an increase in the demand, so therefore the tendency now is patataasan nila ang price. So who adjusts between the two quantities? Is it the QD? Is it the quantity demanded, or the price? Okay, the one that adjusts is the price. The price is dependent to the quantity demanded. So therefore, if we are going to plot that one in our Cartesian plane, so the quantity demanded, we are going to plot that one on the x-axis. So just like what you have seen in this illustration, we plot the quantity demanded, or the kilos, in the x-axis, where we have there the 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20. While the price, we plot that one in our y-axis. So 30, 35, 40, 45, and 50. And then you are going to set the coordinates. So for example, for situation A, we have 4 and 50. So ipa-plot mo yan doon sa equation plane, or doon sa graph mo. Then after you plot those points, or for the coordinates that you have for every situation, then you are going to connect them using a line. So as you can see, nakabuo tayo ng slanting line, and it slopes downward from left to right. Okay, so from this example, this brings us the law of demand, which states that if the price goes up, the quantity demanded of a good will go down. So this time, let us proceed now on the demand. So we already discussed about the demand schedule and the demand. So it is very easy lang naman, diba? So for you to create a demand curve, or for you to plot it, or for you to graph it, then you need to have a demand schedule. But of course, for us to really analyze the movement or the demand of a certain product and how the price reacts to it, then therefore we need to have or to set our demand function. So demand can be analyzed mathematically through a demand function, and this demand function is expressed as a mathematical function. Thus, we can show our mathematical functions for demand as, so this demand function that we'll be using at this point is actually derived from the line equation. I know you are familiar with this because you already encountered this one when you were still in grade 7. So the line equation that we have here is the y is equal to mx plus b, wherein y is the dependent variable and our m is our slope, and the x there we have our independent variable, and our b, that would be our y-intercept. So how did we derive our demand function from that line equation? So from that line equation, we were able to derive this demand function. So we have now our QD is equal to A plus B times P. So our QD there is the quantity demanded, or our dependent variable. Then we have our A, which is the Q-intercept. This Q-intercept, that is the value of a quantity demanded if the price is equal to 0. So A plus B, our B now, that would be our inverse, the inverse of the slope, wherein, diba, you know that the formula of the slope is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 all over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. But in this case, we are going to replace them by the change of QD. This one, the change of QD all over the change of P. That is the change of quantity demanded all over the change of the price. Wherein we're going to use this formula. So B is equal to QD sub 2 minus QD sub 1 all over P sub 2 minus P sub 1. So later on, I will be explaining how we're going to use this formula in our problem later on. Then after B, we have, so A plus B times P. So this P refers to our price, which is the independent variable. So let us proceed on the next slide. So let us have an example. So let's say we will still use our example a while ago. So we have our demand schedule here, we have the situation, we have the price, and we have the quantity demanded. And out of this demand schedule, we are going to create, or we have to graph it so that we could create our demand curve. So anong itsura na magiging demand curve natin? So it will look like that. So I assume that you already know how to plot the coordinates, or how you're going to graph the demand curve. So I will not delve deep with that. So after that one, let us now proceed to the demand function. So how can we establish our demand function? So we are going to follow several steps. So let us begin with step 1. The first thing you're going to do is you have to identify two situations from the demand schedule which will serve as your QD1, QD2, P1, and P2. So let's say this is your demand schedule. Ito yung kanina, yung pinakita ko sa inyo. And then you have now the freedom to choose at least two situations, but make sure na magkakasunod ang dalawang situation. So let's say the two situations that you have chosen are situation B and situation C, wherein in situation C, the price there is 45. And the price for situation C is 40. Now let us now, what do you call that one? Let us ililabel natin sila. So for example, for situation B, si 45, yan ang magiging P1, P sub 1. Tapos sa situation C, 40 na price, that will be your P2 or P sub 2. Then for situation B, your QD there is 8. And for situation C, the QD is 12. So ang 8, that will become your QD sub 1. And the 12 will become your QD sub 2. Okay? So now you already have your given. So may given na tayo. So P sub 1 is equal to 45. P sub 2 is equal to 40. QD sub 1 is equal to 8. Then QD sub 2 is equal to 12. So we will be using this one in the succeeding step. So kindly take this down in your notebook. Isulat nyo para hindi natin makalimutan. Okay? So let us proceed. So let us now proceed to step number 2. So for step number 2, solve for B. So ano nga yung B? That is now the value of your slope, the slope of the line using the inverse slope formula for demand function, wherein B is equal to QD sub 2 minus QD sub 1 all over P sub 2 minus P sub 1. Using the given values, yung kanina, yung in-identify natin, yung dalawang situations na magkakasunod wherein we use B and C. So we have now P sub 1 is equal to 45, yan. Then P sub 2 is equal to 40. Then we have QD sub 1 is equal to 8. Then QD sub 2 is equal to 12. Remember kanina, I already introduced to you the formula or the equation that we will be using for us to identify the value of our slope. So diba, we will be using B is equal to QD sub 2 minus QD sub 1 all over P sub 2 minus P sub 1. So this time, let us, what do you call that one? We are going to substitute the values in our formula. So what is our QD? What is our QD sub 2? So the value of our QD sub 12, and our QD sub 1 is 8. Mangyayari, magiging 12 minus 8 kasi QD sub 2 minus QD sub 1. So sa baba naman tayo, over. So P sub 2 minus P sub 1. So what is the value of your P sub 2? That is 40. The value of your P sub 1, that is 45. So you're going to write it as 40 minus 45. So we already substituted all the values in our formula. So we have now B is equal to 12 minus 8 over 40 minus 45. So 12 minus 8, that is equal to 4. Ayan, 4. And then 40 minus 45, that is equal to negative 5. So using your calculator, so you are going to divide 4 divided by negative 5, that is equal to negative 0.80. So sorry, nakalimutan ko pala ang negative. So that is negative 0.80. Okay? So we already have now our slope, which is the value of our B. So iset aside mo muna yan siya, pero huwag mong kalimutan because we will be using that value later on as we solve for our demand function. So this time, let us proceed now on the step number 3. We already solved the value of B or the value of our slope. This time, we will be solving the value of our A, which is the Q-intercept. So you have to choose. Ayan, mag-choose na naman. You have to choose one situation in the demand schedule and substitute the chosen P and QD in the demand function. So ito, iba na naman ito ha. So, mamimili ka ng isang situation doon sa iyong demand schedule. So, let's say this is your demand schedule. So, you have 5 situations. You have the freedom to choose any of the situation. Let's say, ang napili mo na situation is situation D, wherein the price is 35 and your quantity demanded is 16. Ang sabi doon sa step is you are going to substitute these values in the demand function. Yung demand function natin is QD is equal to A plus B times P. So we have now our values. P is equal to 35 and QD is equal to 16. But we should not forget that we already have now the value of our slope. Ano yung value ng slope? That is negative 0.80. That is our B. So this time, let us now substitute the values in our demand equation. So QD is equal to A plus B times P. So what is our QD? QD is 16 is equal to A. What is your A? Ayan, yan yung hinahanap natin si A, si Q-intercept. So as is lang yan siya. So plus B, ano yung B mo? That is the value of your slope. That is negative 0.80 times P. What is your P? The value of your P is 35. So we have now 16 is equal to A plus the quantity of negative 0.80 times 35. The next step you are going to do, of course, when we are solving equation, we have to be very careful and we have to follow PEMDAS. So, of course, mas nauna naman talaga si multiplication compared kay addition. So, magmumultiply muna tayo. So, ano yung dalawang numbers na i-multiply? So, we are going to multiply negative 0.8 times 35. So, negative 0.8 times 35, that is equal to negative 28. So, we have now 16 is equal to A plus the quantity of negative 28. Okay, sorry. So now, ano ba talaga yung operation na ilalagay natin dito? Since merong plus, meron ding minus, all we need to do is to multiply these two. So, positive times negative, what would be the answer? That is negative. That's why we come up with 16 is equal to A minus 28. So, our goal now is mahanap natin si A and kailangan maiwan si A in a certain place na siya lang isa. Diba? We were able to solve this one during our junior high school and pati sa general mathematics ay very familiar with this. So, ayan. So, all we need to do now is we are going to transpose. Sino ang i-transpose natin? Sino i-transpose? Si negative 28 doon sa kabila because we are going to combine like terms. Okay? So, ang magiging result niyan would be 16 plus 28 is equal to A. Ayan. So, we can now combine 16 and 28. Now, question. Sir, bakit nagiging plus? Diba negative 28? Diba remember, when you are going to transpose a number, ang sign niya is mag-change. So from negative, it becomes positive. That's why from negative 28, it becomes positive 28. So this time, let us add the two numbers. So 16 plus 28, that is equal to 44. So now, the value of our A is 44. A is equal to 44. And our Q-intercept is 44. Okay, but however, we are not sure if the value of our Q-intercept, which is A, is really 44. So, ang gagawin natin ngayon is magkakaroon tayo ng second attempt in solving the value of our A. So, ang gagawin nyo ngayon is mamimili na naman kayo ng another situation. Diba, ang pinili nyo kanina is, ano ba yung pinili nyo? That is letter D. So, mamili na naman kayo ng ibang situation. So, let's say, ang napili nyo daw is situation E. Let us assume that your chosen situation is situation E for the second attempt. Again, this is your second attempt, wherein the value of your P is 30, ayan, and the value of your quantity demanded or QD is 20. So these two values will be substituted to the demand function. So same process pa rin yung ginawa nyo kanina doon sa pag-solve nyo for you to solve the letter A or our Q-intercept. So ito. So we have now our second attempt, and sa second attempt, ang pinili nyo ay situation E. So sa situation E, meron siyang P is equal to 30 and QD is equal to 20. And do not forget that the value of our slope is negative 0.80. So now, let us have our demand equation. So QD is equal to A plus B times P. So all we need to do is to substitute the values. So our QD is 20. So ayan, 20 is equal to A. So wala tayong A kasi yan yung hinahanap natin. Plus B. What is our B? Our B is negative 0.80 times P. What is our P? That is 30. So times 30. So we have now 20 is equal to A plus the quantity of negative 0.80 times 30. So, ang gagawin natin ngayon, since follow tayo ng PEMDAS, so iuna muna natin itong multiplication. So, negative 0.80 times 30, that is equal to negative 24. So, we have now 20 is equal to A plus the quantity of negative 24. So, for us to have our final operation for that, so positive times negative, that will become negative. So we have now 20 is equal to A minus 24. So ililipat natin, we are going to transpose negative 24 doon sa kabila na side katabi ni 20 so that may iwan si A. So when we transpose negative 24, it will become positive 24. So we have now 20 plus 24 is equal to A. So 20 plus 24, that is 44. So the value of our A is 44 and our Q-intercept at the same time is 44. So we are now sure that the value of our A is really 44. So we already solved now the value of our B, which is negative 0.80, and the value of our A is 44. Ayan, wag natin yan silang kakalimutan. Okay, kasi gagamitin yan natin sila later on. So now we are already now in our step number 4. So for step 4, since we already have now the value of B, which is equal to negative 0.80, and the value of our A, which is 44, A is equal to 44, we can now complete our demand function. So paano ba ito? So of course, kailangan natin, we have to set first our demand equation. We have the QD is equal to A plus B times P. So the value of our A now is 44 plus the value of our B is negative 0.8 times P. So positive times negative, so the answer for that will be negative. So that's why we come up with QD is equal to 44 minus 0.80 times P. So that will be our final demand function. So ito na yung gagamitin natin later on. So ayan siya, that would be our final demand function. So wag natin kakalimutan yan kasi yan yung gagamitin natin mamaya. Okay, so now we are already in our step number 5. So for step number 5, for you to verify whether the demand function, yung kanina, yung final, if it is really correct, we are going to check it using the two situations in our demand schedule. So for this, kayo ang mamimili kung anong situations ang gagamitin nyo for the checking. So it's either magkalapit yung dalawa, it's either A, B, or pwede din A and C, pwede din D and E, pwede B and D, as long as dalawa, okay? This is for the checking, okay? So for this case, for this example, let's say ang pinili nyo daw is situation A and situation C. Wherein ang situation A, ang price niya is 50 and the quantity demanded is 4. While sa situation C, ang price niya is 40 and the quantity demanded is 12. So now let us check. So ayan. So ang first checking natin, of course, mamili tayo kung saan yung unang gagamitin natin na situation. So let's say ang first natin iti-check is ang situation A. So for situation A, our P is 50 and our QD is 4. So these values will be substituting them in our final demand equation. Our final demand equation is QD is equal to 44 minus 0.80 times P. So you are going to substitute QD. What is the value of your QD? That is 4. So 4 is equal to 44 minus 0.80 times P. What is the value of your P? That is 50. So 4 is equal to 44 minus 0.80 times 50. So unahin natin itong multiplication. So 0.80 times 50, the answer is 40. So ayan. So 4 is equal to 44 minus 40. So 44 minus 40 is equal to 4. So 4 is equal to 4. Kapag kapareha na gani siya, that means our equation is correct. Ayan. So ito naman sa situation C, para sure talaga tayo if our demand function is really correct. So for situation C, ang P doon is equal to 40 and the QD is equal to 12. So we are going to substitute these values in our final demand equation, which is QD is equal to 44 minus 0.80 times P. Our QD for situation C is 12 minus equals 44 minus 0.80 times P. Our P is 40. So ayan, negative 0.80 times 40, that is equal to negative 32. So we come up with 12 equals 44 minus 32. So 44 minus 32, that is 12. So ayan, so pareha na sila. 12 is equal to 12. So therefore our equation is correct. So ganun lang kadali. So that is the process as to how you're going to establish your demand function. But do not forget na mag-check talaga sa last part, okay? So this time, let us have another example. Ito, try natin ito. So of course, kapag mag-start tayo, kailangan we need to have a demand schedule. So this is our demand schedule. Same pa rin, we have 5 situations. So we have the P, we have for A, 0.5, B, 1, C, 1.5, D, 2, E, 2.5. And for our QD or quantity demanded, so meron tayong 500, 400, 300, 200, and 100. Next step, after we analyze our demand schedule, we are going to graph our demand curve. Okay, so do not forget that our QD should be on the x-axis and our price should be on the y-axis. So you're going to plot them. So for example, ito, this is 100, 100, and 2.5. Ayan, yung point na yan. So ito, so this one is 202, this is 301.5, this is 401, and this is 500 and 0.5. Okay? So I believe you already know how to graph it kasi masyadong madali lang naman yan. So let us proceed. So after you graph or create your demand curve, the next thing you're going to do is you are going to solve for B or your slope. But before you solve for your slope, make sure naka-identify ka na ng dalawang situation sa iyong demand schedule. Make sure magkakasunod. So ano yung dalawa na napili mo? Let's say ang napili mo is D and E. So for D, we have P1. Let's say our D will be our P1 and QD sub 1. So our P sub 1 is 2. Our QD sub 1 is 200. And our situation E, that will be our P sub 2 and QD sub 2. So our P sub 2, that will be 2.5. And our QD sub 2 will be 100. Okay? Kung ano yung nauna, yun yung sub 1. tapos yung pangalawa, yun yung sub 2, okay? Since D ang nauna, so siya yung magiging sub 1 natin. So for situation D, again, P sub 1 is equal to 2, QD sub 1 will be equal to 200. And for situation E, P sub 2 is equal to 2.5 and QD sub 2 will be equal to 100. Now we're going to solve for B. So paano ba i-solve ang B? Ano ba yung formula dito? So B is equal to QD sub 2 minus QD sub 1 all over P sub 2 minus P sub 1. Oh, let us substitute the values. So what is our QD sub 2? Our QD sub 2 is 100. Our QD sub 1 is 200. So 100 minus 200 over what is your P sub 2? Your P sub 2 is 2.5. What is your P sub 1? P sub 1 is 2. So magiging 2.5 minus 2. So now we have B is equal to 100 minus 200 all over 2.5 minus 2. So what is 100 minus 200? That is negative 100. So what is 2.5 minus 2? So that is 0.5. So compute this one in your calculator. So negative 100 all over 0.5, that is equal to negative 200. So now the value of our B is negative 200. Okay, so we have now our value of B. So wag nating kakalimutan yan. Okay? So next, after we solve for our B, let us solve now for our A. So for A, let us assume that you choose situation A and situation B for your two trials to solve for A. So remember, for you to solve for A, kailangan mamimili ka ng isang situation. But since kailangan ng dalawang situations or kailangan dalawang trials, so dalawang situations ang pipiliin mo. So for the first trial, this one, ito trial 1, solve for A, ang ginamit natin is situation A. O tingnan nyo na lang doon sa ano ha, tingnan nyo na lang doon yung module. So for situation A, ang P natin doon is 0.5 and for QD is equal to 500. And do not forget that the value of our B or our slope is negative 200. So we are going to substitute these values in the demand function. So QD is equal to A plus B times P. So what is the value of our QD? Okay, check. Okay, so the value of our QD, that is 500, ayan, is equal to A, so wala kasi yan yung hahanapin natin, plus B, what is the value of our B? That is negative 200 times P, what is the value of our P? That is 0.5. So multiply natin. Ito, negative 200 times 0.5. So that is equal to negative 100. So positive times negative, we come up with negative. So ayan, 500 is equal to A minus 100. Ayan, 500 is equal to A minus 100. So ang goal natin, kailangan may iwan sa isang side si A. So what we're going to do, you have to transpose negative 100 to the other side. So kapag mag-transpose, negative will become positive. So 500 plus 100 is equal to A. So 500 plus 100, that is equal to 600. So the value of our A is 600. O ayan. Para mas maging sure pa talaga tayo, we will have trial number 2. Solve na naman for A, but this time gagamitin natin is situation B. Magkaiba ha, kasi kanina ang ginamit natin is situation A. Now we will use situation B. For situation B, the value of our price is 1. The value of our QD is 400. And our B, same pa rin, kasi yan yung sinolve natin kanina, that is equal to negative 200. Now, let us substitute these values to our demand function. Our demand function is QD is equal to A plus B times P. The value of our QD is 400. So, ayan, 400. Then, so now, 400 is equal to A plus B. What is our B? That is negative 200. So negative 200 times our P, that is equal to 1. So we have now 400 is equal to A plus times the quantity of negative 200 times 1. So let us multiply negative 200 times 1, that is equal to negative 200. So positive times negative, so that is negative. So 400 is equal to A minus 200. So kailangan maiwan si A dyan, so we have to transpose negative 200 on the other side. So magiging 400 plus 200 kasi mag-change yung sign niya kapag inilipat. So 400 plus 200 is equal to A. So 400 plus 200, that is equal to 600. So ayan, pareha sila. So therefore, sure tayo that the value of our A is equal to 600. So ayan, meron na tayong B. Our B is equal to negative 200 and our A is equal to 600. Ayan, so gagamitin natin yan siya sa pag-establish ng ating function. So, we have now our final demand function. So ayan, all we need to do is to substitute the values of A and B. So QD is equal to A. Hello, mic test. Check. Ayan. So QD is equal to A plus B times P. So QD is equal to A. Our A is 600. That is our A. And our B is negative 200. So positive times negative magiging negative. So magiging QD is equal to 600 minus 200 times P. So that will be our final demand equation. Okay? So let us proceed. So for us to check whether our final demand equation is really correct, so mag-checking tayo. So what you need to do now is you have to choose na naman dalawang situations doon sa demand schedule. So kayo ang bahala kung ano yung pipiliin nyo. So let's say in this equation, ang pipiliin nyo is situation C and situation D. So let's have checking number 1. For checking number 1, let's say that we will be using situation C. So our P is 1.5 and our QD is 300. So we have to substitute that one in our final demand function. Our final is QD is equal to 600 minus 200 times P. So our QD for situation C is 300. Ayan. So equals 600, that is our A, minus 200, that is our B, times P. What is P in our C is, what is the value of P in our situation C? That is 1.5. So 300 is equal to 600 minus 200 times 1.5. So una tayo sa multiplication. So negative 200 times 1.5. So the answer would be negative 300. So we have now 300 is equal to 600 minus 300. So 600 minus 300, that is 300. So ayan, so pareha na sila. We were able to equate it. So tama ang ating equation. So next, for checking number 2, we will be using situation D. For situation D, we have P is equal to 2. So tingnan nyo ito doon ha sa demand schedule. Sa demand schedule talaga mag-base. And our QD for situation D is 200. So we will be using our final demand equation. So QD is equal to 600 minus 200 times P. So our QD for situation D is equal to 200 is equal to 600 minus 200 times 2. So negative 200 times 2, that is 400. So 600 minus 400, we come up with 200. So we were able to equate it with 200 is equal to 200, which is correct. That our equation is correct. So ganun lang. So all you need to do is to follow those steps if we are going to establish our demand function. So first thing you're going to do is you have to analyze first the demand schedule. Then second, you have to graph your demand curve. Then after that one, you have to solve for B using the slope or the inverse slope equation or the formula. Then after that one, before pa nun pala, mamili kayo ng dalawang situation na magkasunod for you to solve the B or the slope. Then after you solve the B, isosolve nyo na naman ang A. So mamili kayo ng isa na situation doon sa demand schedule. for you to solve A. But make sure when we solve A, we need to have 2 trials so that we are sure. So bali dalawang situations ang pipiliin. Then after that one, you are going to establish your final demand function. Then after establishing the final demand function, you are going to check it using the 2 situations na kayo ang mamimili doon sa demand schedule. Using the final demand function given the values of A and B. Okay? So, ayan pala yung kanina. Okay. Yan yung dalawang equation yung sa sample. I mean, yung dalawang situation. Okay. So, ayan. So, now, I believe you were able to understand how you're going to do it. So, let's have activity number 1. So, for this activity, the direction is you are going to perform the following. So, kailangan i-follow talaga ito ha. For number 1, you have to draw a demand curve based on the given demand schedule for every item. So, there will be 5 items and merong 5 demand schedule. So, for every demand schedule, i-follow niyo yung procedure yung kanina. Okay? So, bali 5 kaing atuan inyong buhaton. Okay? So, second, you have to solve for B, then solve for A with 2 trials, then establish the demand equation, then perform checking. 2 checkings ang kailangan, parehan sa example. Then, if your answer has a decimal point, you are going to round it off to 2 decimal points. Okay? Then, you have to follow the process as shown in the example dyan sa inyong module, yung kanina, yung pinakita ko. And you have to show your solution, of course. Hindi pwedeng walang solution. Kailangan makita talaga ang solution. Then you are going to use graphing paper as you answer this activity or quiz. Okay? Kailangan sa graphing paper, isusulat lahat ng sagot. Okay? So, this is your item number 1. So, ayan. So, i-follow niyo yung procedure kanina. Ganun ang gagawin. Okay? The next, this is your item number 2. This is your item number 3. This is your item number 4. And item number 5. So, good luck. So, as you answer this activity, so just follow the examples. Pero kung meron kayong mga confusion or if you have queries or questions na nalilito pa kayo doon sa process, so you may chat me sa ating group chat or you may send a personal message sa akin so that we could clarify your questions or we could address the questions that you have, yung mga confusion na meron kayo dyan, okay? So, thank you so much for attending this, for watching this video. And for lesson 2, I will be creating another video for that, okay? So, that would be all. Thank you so much and I hope you start answering your module in Applied Economics. Thank you.